Efficiency experts fire wrong guy. About 20 years ago I worked for an electrical parts supply house. We sold material to industrial companies around Southeast Michigan. Ford Motor Company was our largest customer. They spent about $200,000 per month with us. Business was good. The company hired some new young management. These guys came in and were going to make the place as efficient as possible and cut off some dead weight. Well, they made some changes. They laid off 4 people that they said were unneeded. For some reason unknown to them, the Ford business went from $200,000 to zero. So the new management called an emergency meeting to try to figure out the Ford problem. They asked the group why the Ford business was down. Someone raised their hand and told them that the reason we haven't seen any purchase orders from Ford was because they laid off the guy who used to sell to Ford. Here is the backstory. Ken, an older gentleman who had the relationship with Ford, didn't know the computer system well at all. So he would bring Ford purchase orders into the building every day and hand them off for someone else to input them into the system. So when you looked at computer reports, it looked like Ken was not productive at all, while in reality, Ken was the most productive person there. Ken was the first person these young bucks laid off. Ken and I were friends, and neither one of us could figure out why they let him go. The day of the layoff, Ken went home and made one phone call to a competitor. Turns out that you can get hired real quick if you do $2.5 million a year with Ford. The new company gave him a company vehicle and commission. 2 things he didn't have at the old job. Overall, Ken's pay went up about $35,000 per year. After the meeting to figure out why Ford was no longer buying, they immediately called Ken and admitted their mistake and begged him to return. Ken said, "Nah. And this is why you must take your time before taking such a decision." Similar story where I work. They had one guy that did pest control, from insects to snakes and raccoons. He took care of it all, except he didn't use the computerized work order system. People called him. He took care of the problem. Higher-ups looked at the reports and determined the pest control guy didn't do anything, so they got rid of him. His was paid roughly $35,000 a year. They now pay over $70,000 a year to dozens of different companies to do half of the work he did. Chef's kiss. Young bucks always think they can impress the owners by firing people to cut costs, especially the older people who might know more about the business than them. What you do at Initech is you take the specifications from the customer and bring them down to the software engineers? Yes, that's right. Well, then I just have to ask, why can't the customers take them directly to the software people? Well, I'll tell you why. Because engineers are not good at dealing with customers. So you physically take the specs from the customer? Well, no. My secretary does that. Or they're faxed. So then you must physically bring them to the software people? Well, no. I mean, sometimes. What would you say you do here? Look, I already told you. I deal with the @% customers, so the engineers don't have to. I have people skills. I am good at dealing with people. Can't you understand that? What the hell is wrong with you people? This is why econ majors and consultants are a plague to modern man. No skin in the game or dirt under their nails. Had a similar experience, although on a much smaller scale. Worked for a government contractor. Government agencies require lots of reports. One of our best customer agencies required weekly progress reports on each project we were doing. For them, it's extra work. But the agency paid us well and their checks were always on time and never bounced. This had been going on long enough that our upper management just got complacent and treated it as guaranteed income. Unfortunately, our upper management was not good. When the economy took a dip and our revenue dipped with it, the first thing management did was lay off employees. They did not evaluate the value of those employees. They mainly laid off people who were not part of the management cliques. They laid off the people who researched, prepared and submitted those reports. Because the contracts required those reports, and the reports stopped, the agency stopped paying. Management didn't seem to realize or care, until that agency told them it was auditing the contract. Cue the sudden chaos and CYA attempts. None of it worked. We were clearly in violation of the contract terms, and the agency terminated its contracts with us. It wasn't a big enough financial hit to kill off the company, but its effects were definitely felt. Management responded by laying off more people that it should have kept. Ended up getting another contract terminated early due to non-performance. These genius managers managed to bankrupt the company after about 5 years. How did they get away with it? They were relatives, mostly kids of the owner, and friends of those kids. People buy from people. My experience with a bona fide efficiency expert wasn't as drastic, but the flavor was exactly the same. The guy was on site for 48 hours, got paid $50,000 and screwed everything up. A person with those skill sets could make far more money if they got into something that required mandatory incompetence, like politics. Oh, I remember a good one. My old company likes to reorganize every few years. The mailroom guy, we'll call him Bill, ended up being reshuffled into corporate and reported to an HR manager. That manager, who was later terminated for messing with time cards, got annoyed with the way Bill worked and had him transferred to facilities without increasing their budget. The VP for facilities tried to figure out what Bill did, but eventually told he would have to lay someone off. So, instead of the 3 facilities guys who made more, they terminated Bill. First, mail had to be delivered to the front entrance, where the receptionist sorted it and put it into file folders. Each department then had to go up front and get their mail. Next, the copy center, also run by Bill, had to print their own manuals. This is where I came in. I spent about a year either printing manuals or writing standard work so production could make them to send to finished goods. Eventually, we gave up and bought the manuals made by a third party. Also, the head of facilities and an admin assistant had to take care of the outgoing mail and invoices. At least 4 people took over his job, not counting the times he went to the post office to send out invoices sooner or picked up cake or lunches for the company. The cost of printing manuals alone was at least double his salary. But no one bothered to actually put what Bill did into dollars. Luckily, Bill got a job soon after, making more and only doing mail. My dad had stories like this from Ford itself. He started on the floor and worked his way up to QC engineer. He saw a lot of great decisions being made, saw the quality increase until it was on par with the Japanese companies, and then saw new management and cost-cutting result in a decrease in quality. It's a shame. I don't know Ken, but this is not an unusual story. I know a few people who have had this happen to them. Most of them said, "Nah, but I'd think there must be a way to secure some nice lump sum payments to do minimal work if the company was very desperate." Not in this particular situation since Ken already works at a competitor. When I was in college, I worked for a security guard company that had a brewery as an account. The brewery for some reason really liked me and my buddy but hated our boss and the other couple of guards we had. One of the facility managers that had to oversee us would literally only talk to me on what needed to be done, fixed. It infuriated my owner. They were locked into a contract, but it didn't say how communication had to be handled. Long story short, the facilities manager told me, "Lose that night guard. He's screwing around on the computers." My security boss said he had to hear it from them and not me, a 21-year-old kid. Facility manager said, "I talked to you. You're around and have a good personality." The security boss sold the company a couple of months later. Was told later it was due to communication issues. Facility manager offered me a permanent job. So my career over the last 10 years has been primarily centered around process improvement and increasing efficiency. I have saved millions of dollars for companies and I have entirely automated processes. That being said, I have one rule that I will never violate. Ever. I will never improve a process or create an automation or identify a better way of doing things that results in a single person losing their job. For context, I seem to have almost a supernatural ability to understand processes almost immediately, articulate both the goals and the problems of processes even when the process SMEs cannot. And because of that I can identify the waste in these processes. All of this happens in my head really quickly. This is not a brag, and folks who work with me would tell you that if anything I'm underselling my ability to do this. Which means, I can usually both identify process improvements and efficiencies and can discern whether that will make somebody's role redundant. If it will, I keep my mouth shut. Primarily because sometimes you don't have the context of situations like these where the person is in the job not because of what they do but because of their expertise and connections. That is a very long-winded way of getting to the heart of the anti-work movement. It is about people over profits. If you want to increase your stock price, it is immoral to do so by reclaiming your wealth through underpaying people or overworking people, or eliminating people. If you want to increase your stock price, invest in people and have good ideas. If your process is made more efficient, then it is your responsibility to ensure that you reinvest in those people to let them do better work, not to get rid of them. No company was ever made better by getting rid of their best people. If you made it to this point, thank you for listening to my rant. It just really cheeses me when process improvement specialists and efficiency experts use their talents to line their pockets at the expense of people's livelihoods. It is almost as if those efficiency experts directly stole money from the people they got laid off. To be young means to know a lot, but certainly not enough. I've been thinking about getting an MBA just because I want to understand what it is they learn to make them so universally stupid. I find this post hilarious, and yes, I agree, most of these young nuts are very inexperienced when it comes to managing a business and only look at the basic info to draw a conclusion. It's especially detrimental when only a single guy has connections with their supplier. These mistakes happen often, but they don't seem to take that under consideration. I used to have a big stake in an insurance company when I was straight out of HS, and boy can I tell you, when looking for a good management team, most of them look like exactly what you are describing, and majority of them are pretty smug once they actually get a management position. Even before I told them I was the one hiring them, they gave me holier than thou kinda stares just 'cause they think I'm a young guy. But they got quite a startle when I was the one interviewing them. Just in my working lifetime, customer service went from actually solving the problem, or at least figuring out how, why, when the wheels fell off, to just get the caller off the phone as fast as possible to keep your call count up. That's the only metric anyone is tracking. having been laid off as CTO of several companies only to watch them fail very quickly after. This is a great story. A rare example of corporate greed hurting those who are greedy.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Eracast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.